risk that as 3G continues to deviate from our principles, they will eventually harm both our value and our values. How do we prevent that from happening?
Well, it's interesting. I mentioned earlier that it was very gradual, but it would have been probably a better decision. We fired 2,000 people over time, and some retired and left and all of that. But at the textile operation, it didn't work. And at Hochschild Kohn, the successor, we fortunately sold it to somebody else, but eventually they closed up the department stores because department stores, at least that particular one, and a good many actually, including our competitors in Baltimore, could not make it work. Walmart came along with something, and now Amazon's coming along with something that changed the way people bought things. We mentioned our poultry, the CTB, which is a lot of different farm equipment. The farm equipment often that CTB develops, the idea is that it's more productive than what already is out there, which means fewer people are employed on farms. We had 80% of the American population, working population, working on farms a couple of hundred years ago. And if nobody had come up with things to make it more productive, farming, we'd have 80% of people working on farms now to feed our populace. And it means that we'd be living in a far, far more primitive way. So if you look at the auto industry, it gets more productive. If you look at any industry, they're trying to get more productive. Walmart was more productive than department stores, and that will continue in America, and it better continue, or our kids won't live any better than we do. Our kids will live better than we do because America does get more productive as it goes along, and people do come up with better ways of doing things. When Kraft Heinz finds that they can do whatever amount of business, $27 billion worth of business or something, and they can do it with fewer people, they are doing what American business has done for a couple hundred years and why we live so well, but they do it very fast. They're more than fair in terms of severance pay and all of that sort of thing, but they don't want to have two people doing the job that one can do. And I frankly don't like going through that, having faced that. I faced that down at Dempster in Beatrice, Nebraska, and it really needed change. But the change is painful for a lot of people, and I just would rather spend my days not doing that sort of thing, having had one or two experiences. But I think that it's absolutely essential to America that we become more productive, because that is the only way we have more consumption per capita, is have more productivity per capita. Charlie?
Well, you're absolutely right. We don't want to go back to subsistence farming. I had a week of that when I was young on a western Nebraska farm, and I hated it. And I don't miss the elevator operators who used to sit there all day in the elevator and run the little crank, So, on the other hand, as you say, it's terribly unpleasant for the people that have to go through it. And why would we want to get into the business of doing that over and over ourselves? We did it in the past when we had to, when the businesses were dying. I don't see any moral fault in 3G at all, but I do see that there's some political reaction that doesn't do anybody any good.
Milton Friedman, I think it was, used to talk about the time, probably apocryphal. He would talk about the huge construction project in some communist country, and they had thousands and thousands and thousands of workers out there with shovels digging away on this major project. And then they had a few of these big earth-moving machines behind, which were idle, and which could have done the work in 1/20th of the time of the workers. So the economist suggested to the local party worker or whoever it was that, why in the world didn't they use these machines to get the job done in 1/10 or 1/20th the time instead of having all these workers out there with shovels? And the guy replied, well, yeah, but that would put the workers out of work. And Friedman said, well, then why don't you give them spoons to do it instead?